Your mum, who used to absolutely love baking pies, has suddenly stopped going near the oven. And Dad, the keen fisherman, hasn't touched his rods for 6 months. You ring them up, ask how they are, and all you get back is a flat, monosyllabic, "I'm fine." But there's no cheerfulness or warmth in their voice. You might think, oh, it's just old age, tiredness, aches and pains that come with the years. But what if I told you these are actually silent cries for help that we simply aren't hearing? Today, we're going to discuss a quiet epidemic that we often put down to temperament or advancing years, later life depression. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will learn to see what is hidden from most people, and you might just save the health, or even the life, of someone you love. Let's be clear about one crucial thing right off the bat. In our society, old age is often wrapped up in a kind of sad but dignified stereotype. We picture our grandparents sitting quietly by the window, wistfully remembering their youth, but clinical depression has absolutely nothing to do with that sort of gentle melancholy. It's not simply philosophical reflection on the years gone by. It is a serious medical illness that affects the brain, changes its chemical processes, and quite literally poisons a person's existence. The trouble is, for decades, the mental health of older people has simply been ignored. Any complaints of lethargy, despair, or lack of energy were immediately written off as an inevitable part of the aging process. What do you expect when you're 70? Sadly, many people have heard that exact phrase, "imimui." This attitude has led to millions of people suffering in silence, completely missing out on the help they desperately need, because neither they nor their loved ones understand that this is a genuine illness, and certainly not the normal state of being. We need to start by tackling the most common and often the most dangerous misconception head on. Myth number 1. Oh, it's not depression, they're just getting set in their ways and their character has turned sour. You might notice your mother becoming constantly critical, or your father is cynical and dissatisfied with everything. It looks, on the surface, like they've simply become the quintessential grumpy old fogey. But let's dig a little deeper than that. Imagine how they must feel, constantly exhausted, utterly helpless, carrying around a gaping black hole of hopelessness inside them. Suddenly, every minor thing, every simple request is viewed as an overwhelming burden. The familiar noise of the grandchildren playing, which once brought joy, now feels utterly deafening. And that necessary trip to the shops, it's like planning an expedition up Mount Everest. This sudden irritation and anger is not a personality trait. It is a defense mechanism. It's the way an exhausted, weak, or ill person tries to wall themselves off from a world that is constantly demanding energy they simply do not have left to give. It is essentially a silent scream saying, "Please leave me alone, I cannot cope anymore." So when you next encounter that sudden burst of anger or unexplained resentment, try not to immediately take it personally. Instead, ask yourself, what is truly hiding underneath that protective, prickly armour? To truly grasp what we're facing, we need to look at geriatric depression from a medical and scientific perspective. It's much more than just a case of the blues. It is a complex disorder that affects our emotions, our thought processes, and our physical well-being. Inside the brain, the delicate balance of crucial chemical messengers, known as neurotransmitters, becomes severely disrupted. These include substances like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These chemicals are responsible for transmitting signals between nerve cells, regulating our mood, sleep patterns, appetite, and motivation. When their function goes awry, the world quite literally loses its colour. Imagine an old television set where the colour settings have become completely distorted. The picture is still there, but it appears dull, grey, and utterly lifeless. That is roughly what happens inside the brain of someone struggling with depression. It is absolutely crucial to understand that this condition will not simply disappear if you just try to pull yourself together. You cannot simply will your brain to produce the correct amount of serotonin. This is a legitimate illness, just like diabetes or high blood pressure, and it requires professional diagnosis and proper medical treatment, not moral lectures or insistent demands to snap out of it. The very first sign, and arguably the most revealing one, is what we call anhedonia. It's a complicated word, but it describes a frighteningly simple thing: the loss of the ability to feel pleasure. Things that used to bring joy now feel entirely indifferent, or perhaps even cause irritation. Think about your mother or grandmother. Did she used to absolutely devour her favourite soaps, or spend hours fussing over seedlings on the balcony? Now the television remains switched off, and those gardening trays are gathering dust. Or perhaps your grandfather, who every Saturday would keenly tackle a crossword or read his newspaper cover to cover, now just sits, staring blankly into space. This isn't laziness, nor is it a sign of being jaded or having had enough. It is one of the key symptoms of depression. The brain literally loses the ability to register joy. A favourite meal tastes bland, spending time with grandchildren feels exhausting, and good weather outside seems utterly meaningless. If you notice your loved one has completely given up their long-standing hobbies and pastimes, and when asked why, they reply with something like, "I just don't fancy it," "I've gone off it," or "I haven't got the energy," this is a very serious cause for concern. It's a clear signal that the colour is draining out of their life. The second major signpost we should look out for is a drastic change in their sleeping habits. Now, this can manifest in completely different ways. The classic scenario, of course, is insomnia or sleeplessness. They lie awake for hours, tossing and turning, their mind racing with anxious thoughts. Or perhaps they wake up in the dead of night, 3 or 4 in the morning, with a feeling of inexplicable dread and are completely unable to get another wink of sleep. They then get up feeling utterly worn out and unrested, and that vicious circle simply repeats itself, day in, day out. But there is the flip side of that coin: hypersomnia, or excessive, constant sleepiness. It might seem as if your loved one is sleeping almost constantly, all night and for a good chunk of the day. They might drift off in the armchair watching the telly, or go for a lie down after breakfast and sleep straight through until lunchtime. To an outsider, this can easily look like nothing more than a natural, elderly need for a bit of rest. But in reality, this sort of sleep isn't restorative rest at all. It's an escape from a harrowing reality, from deep emotional pain, and from the sheer weight of hopelessness. When staying awake becomes absolutely unbearable, sleep feels like the only viable refuge. So, if your loved one's sleep pattern has changed drastically, whether towards insomnia or excessive sleep, please remember, it's not just them getting on a bit. It could well be a serious distress signal coming directly from their nervous system. The third major red flag we need to watch out for is changes in eating habits, which usually cause weight fluctuation. Just like with sleep, you often see 2 extremes here. The first is a distinct loss of appetite. They start eating much less. They might turn down their favourite meals, saying things like, "I'm not hungry," or "I just can't face it." Their portions get smaller and smaller, and sometimes they skip meals entirely. This can lead to rapid and significant weight loss, which is particularly dangerous in later life, causing weakness, muscle wastage, and generally worsening their overall condition. Family members might mistakenly assume it's just a digestive problem and focus on treating the wrong thing. The second extreme is conversely overeating, especially craving simple, carbohydrate-heavy foods, sweets and baked goods. Here, food becomes the only easily accessible source of instant comfort, a way to eat away anxiety and sadness. This leads to weight gain, putting extra strain on the heart and joints, and potentially worsening long-term conditions like diabetes. In either scenario, these sharp changes in appetite aren't just fussiness or bad habits. They are a clear symptom of a deeper underlying issue. The fourth crucial sign is a state of persistent, utterly debilitating exhaustion. And we are not talking about the natural tiredness that comes after a busy day out in the garden or a long, vigorous stroll. This is a condition where the simplest of daily actions require immense effort. Things like getting out of bed, having a wash, or simply making that first cup of tea can feel nearly impossible. Every single step requires a huge, often painful, effort of will. People struggling with this often use powerful imagery to describe it. They might say, "It feels as though every drop of energy has been completely sucked out," or "My body is heavy as if it's full of lead," or simply, "My battery has run flat and won't recharge." To an outsider, this profound fatigue is sadly often mistaken for simple laziness or perhaps just apathy. But in reality, this is a truly physical manifestation of depression itself. The illness literally paralyzes the body's essential energy resources. Think of it like a modern smartphone with a battery that is 90% worn out. You plug it in all night, expecting a full charge, but by morning you only have 10% battery capacity, and that small charge disappears right before your eyes. This is precisely what happens to the person. They might sleep 10 or 12 hours only to wake up feeling even more exhausted than they did the night before. This crippling weakness prevents them from living a full and meaningful life, forcing them to turn down social invitations, avoid walks, which ultimately pushes them into deeper isolation and seriously worsens their overall condition. The fifth sign, and arguably the most agonizing for the person experiencing it, is that constant, crushing feeling of guilt, utter worthlessness, and profound hopelessness. Their mind becomes dominated by intensely negative thoughts about themselves, the world around them, and the future ahead. They may start pointlessly blaming themselves for old mistakes, or for becoming a burden to their children and grandchildren, convinced they haven't lived life the right way. Any small failure, perhaps spilling a cup of tea or forgetting a single word, is instantly blown up into a massive catastrophe, serving as yet another proof of their personal inadequacy. You might hear them say things like, "I just get in everyone's way," "I'm completely useless," or "It would be better if I wasn't here." The future looks entirely black, without a single ray of light or hope. They become absolutely certain that things will never improve, that no good is coming, and that their suffering will simply never end. This sense of total hopelessness is one of the most dangerous elements of depression, precisely because it can push a person towards thoughts of suicide. It is vital to remember, this is not an objective assessment of reality. It is a world viewed through the darkened lens of the illness itself. The sixth symptom we need to discuss, which people often simply put down to old age, is trouble with our thinking skills, or cognitive impairment. This means having difficulty concentrating, experiencing memory lapses, and struggling with decision-making. You might find it hard to focus when reading a book or watching a film, or you might keep losing the thread during a conversation. Simple memory slips start happening. Forgetting where you put your spectacles, why you walked into a room, or missing pre-booked appointments or doctor's visits. Even simple daily household decisions can become overwhelming, like deciding what to cook for supper or what clothes to wear outside. Tasks that used to be automatic, such as paying bills or filling out paperwork, suddenly seem impossible and can even cause genuine panic. Naturally, when family members notice this, they often become frightened and immediately suspect the worst, Alzheimer's disease, or outright dementia. While it is true that depression can sometimes precede these conditions, these cognitive problems are very often just a direct symptom of the depression itself, and they are completely reversible with the right treatment. This temporary state even has its own name, pseudo-dementia. The brain, overloaded by constant negative thoughts and anxiety, simply doesn't have the mental resources left to handle other tasks. So, don't rush to assume the worst diagnosis. The first step must always be ruling out depression. And finally, we come to the seventh sign. This one can truly baffle anyone, even medical professionals. It's the somatic, or put simply, physical, manifestations. Depression often cleverly masks itself as various physical ailments. Someone might constantly complain of persistent headaches, chronic back or joint pain, or maybe even chest discomfort. They might develop digestive issues, constipation, diarrhea, or that uncomfortable feeling of fullness and heaviness. Dizziness, ringing in the ears, tinnitus, or even feeling perpetually short of breath are common too. Naturally, they begin the rounds of appointments, seeing cardiologists, neurologists, gastroenterologists, you name it. They undergo numerous costly investigations, ultrasounds, MRIs, and dozens of blood tests. Yet the doctors are completely baffled, shrugging their shoulders and stating, "Medically speaking, all our data shows you're perfectly healthy." It's a truly draining ordeal. They feel the pain physically, yet they're essentially being told it's all in their head. What's actually happening is that the mental pain is so overwhelming, it literally bursts out through the body. This process is called somatization. The psychological distress uses physical symptoms as its outlet. So if you notice a loved one constantly complaining of poor health, and medical professionals can't find any objective physical explanation for their aches and pains, it is definitely time to ask yourself, could this be depression masquerading as illness? Right, let's tackle another really damaging myth, one that often goes hand in hand with what we just discussed. This is myth number 2. When you reach a certain age, everyone has aches and pains, it's just normal. Now, of course, as we get older, chronic conditions do appear. Things like arthritis, hypertension, or heart disease. They are a genuine, objective reality for many senior citizens. But depression doesn't just sit alongside these conditions. It seriously complicates them and adds an extra layer of suffering that we absolutely could do without. When you're depressed, physical pain is felt much more intensely. Worse still, a depressed person often struggles to follow the doctor's orders simply because they lack the strength, energy, or motivation to keep up. They might forget to take their daily medication or neglect monitoring their blood pressure or sugar levels. Depression significantly lowers your pain threshold. What a healthy person might only register as slight discomfort suddenly becomes unbearable agony for someone dealing with depression. And crucially, depression is a serious health risk in itself. It's an independent factor that contributes to the worsening of many physical illnesses. It raises the danger of heart attacks and strokes, weakens the immune system, and slows down recovery after surgery or illness. That's why saying, "Oh well, it's just normal to hurt," is actually a terrible disservice. We need to clearly separate genuine, objective pain, perhaps from your arthritis, from pain that is amplified, sharpened, and shaded in dark tones by depression. If we can address that second part, we absolutely must. Social isolation is both a major symptom and a powerful trigger for depression in older people. This creates a dangerous self-perpetuating cycle. On one side, depression causes people to actively withdraw. They lack energy and motivation, they feel uninteresting, and they constantly worry about being a nuisance or a burden to others. As a result, they start turning down invitations, stop reaching out to friends, and avoid family gatherings. It feels much simpler and safer just to retreat and stay alone. Conversely, this very isolation powerfully fuels the depression. They lose access to the vital positive input from human connection, support, and the precious feeling of being valued or needed. They are left entirely alone with their dark thoughts, which then start to multiply and spread, like mildew growing in a damp basement. Major life changes such as retirement, the loss of a spouse or friends, or children moving away, all drastically reduce a person's social network. These events create the perfect breeding ground for depression to take hold. Someone may go days without speaking to anyone beyond the supermarket cashier. According to research, this state of severe loneliness is as detrimental to health as smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. Therefore, if your loved one has become notably withdrawn or reclusive, please understand, this is far more than just wanting a quiet life. It is a dangerous symptom that requires your immediate attention and support. We've mentioned this topic before, but it's certainly worth revisiting and looking at in more detail. Why is it that depression in older people often manifests not as the typical tears and sadness, but as pure irritability, anger, and constant fault-finding? We have this widespread societal stereotype that depression means somebody crying into their pillow. That's why, when we encounter a perpetually grumpy, dissatisfied older gentleman, the thought that he might actually be suffering from clinical depression never even crosses our mind. This mask of anger is particularly prevalent among men of the older generation. They were raised on familiar slogans. Men don't cry, Complaining is shameful and you must always be strong. As a result, they simply haven't learned how to talk about their emotions. They cannot admit vulnerability or weakness, even privately to themselves. And so, all that accumulated internal pain, despair, and sadness that can't be released through tears finds its only outlet in aggression. Anger becomes the only socially acceptable way for them to signal that they are struggling. They might lash out at loved ones over the smallest things, criticize absolutely everything under the sun, and perpetually blame those around them for their troubles. It's vital to recognize that this fury is rarely, if ever, directed at you. It is simply a distorted reflection of their own profound internal suffering. Behind that facade of constant grumpiness lurks a deeply unhappy, often frightened person who desperately needs support but truly has no idea how to ask for it. It is crucial to understand that late-life depression rarely travels alone. It is intimately connected with a whole host of other serious medical conditions, and frankly, it's often difficult to untangle what is the cause and what is the effect. For instance, depression significantly raises the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. The chronic stress that comes along with depression simply wears out our blood vessels and heart. Conversely, life events like surviving a heart attack or a stroke are, in themselves, powerful triggers for developing post-stroke or post-heart attack depression. There is also a very close link between depression and conditions such as Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. In fact, depression often turns out to be one of the very first preclinical signs of these neurodegenerative illnesses, sometimes appearing years before any noticeable movement problems or clear cognitive decline. Furthermore, depression makes managing conditions such as diabetes, chronic pain syndromes, and thyroid disorders much more difficult. This creates a truly vicious cycle. The physical illness sparks the depression, and then the depression in turn makes it much harder to treat the physical illness effectively. That is precisely why a comprehensive approach is so vital, one that treats not just the body, but the mind and spirit as well. Why is it that our elderly loved ones are so determined to hide how they're really feeling? Why do they insist on saying, everything's fine, even when we know a huge storm is raging inside them? Well, there are several reasons for this silence. The first is simply fear. The fear of admitting any weakness and the overwhelming fear of becoming a burden to their children. They see how frantically busy you are with work, family, and your own existing worries. They genuinely believe their emotional struggles are just minor things, not worth piling on top of your existing load. They certainly don't want to be a nuisance or a burden. Secondly, there is deep shame. For a generation raised firmly in the stiff upper lip and pull yourself together school of thought, seeing a therapist or psychiatrist still feels profoundly shameful, a huge admission of personal failure. They worry about being labelled a bit mad, or even put on file. Sadly, these outdated stereotypes remain incredibly strong. And thirdly, they might simply not recognise what's happening to them. They don't identify their condition as a genuine illness. To them, it's just getting old, general tiredness, or perhaps a bit of a bad temperament. They often don't realise that this is something that can, and absolutely should, be treated, and that they genuinely could feel much better again. So they quietly suffer. Our vital role, then, is to approach them with great sensitivity and observation, helping them to gently overcome these difficult barriers. It's worth bearing in mind that depression can show up quite differently in older men compared to older women. As we've discussed, men often tend to mask their underlying feelings, sometimes presenting their depression as anger, sharp irritability, or even outright aggression. They might misuse alcohol, perhaps trying to drown out or numb that emotional distress. We often see a tendency towards risky behaviour. They might become careless when driving, or less cautious around the home. While men are less likely to complain about feeling low or having a poor mood, they frequently present with physical symptoms instead. Unexplained aches and pains, profound fatigue, and issues like erectile dysfunction. They are also prone to social isolation and withdrawing into themselves. For women, depression often follows a more classic presentation. They are generally more open about acknowledging feelings of profound sadness, emotional distress, and tearfulness. They also speak more readily about feelings of guilt and worthlessness. Depression in women often manifests strongly through anxiety, especially fears regarding the future, and worrying excessively about their own health and the well-being of loved ones. Furthermore, women often experience somatized symptoms. That is, numerous complaints of aches, pains, and general malaise that medical tests cannot physically confirm. Understanding these key gender differences can help us all be more attentive to those less obvious signs, allowing us to spot the problem earlier, even when it doesn't fit the picture of typical depression. Right then, you've spotted some worrying signs and you know you need to talk to your loved one. This is perhaps the trickiest and most crucial stage, you see. One wrong word and they might just shut down completely. So what absolutely must we avoid saying? Those awful, dismissive phrases. Things like, pull yourself together, dear. Just cheer up. Other people have it much worse. Why are you complaining? Or, go for a nice walk. That'll sort you out. You see, language like that simply invalidates their suffering and often leaves them feeling even more guilt about how they're coping. So how do we start this conversation properly? Find a quiet, calm moment when you won't be interrupted. Always speak from your own perspective, using I statements. Don't say, you've become awfully grumpy. Instead, say, I'm worried about you because I've noticed you seem rather down lately. Don't accuse them of neglecting things like you've completely dropped all your activities. Try, I noticed you don't have the energy for your favourite hobby, and that gives me cause for concern. Show genuine empathy. Say something like, I can't fully know how you're feeling right now, but I can see you're finding things terribly hard, and I truly want to help. Crucially, resist the urge to give unsolicited advice. Focus on asking open-ended questions. Offer concrete help with specific actions. For instance, why don't we go to the doctor together? Just for a general checkup. I'd be happy to book the appointment and come along with you. The main thing is to make absolutely sure they understand that you are here. You are entirely on their side, and you are not judging them in the slightest. Now we come to the third major misconception. Pills are dangerous, and they will simply turn him into a zombie. This deep-seated fear of antidepressants and other psychopharmacological treatment is actually very common, especially among the older generation. It's a fear rooted in outdated ideas about the medications available decades ago, drugs from the last century that, yes, truly did have quite a lot of noticeable side effects. But modern pharmacology has advanced in leaps and bounds. Today's antidepressants, particularly those in the class known as SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are highly effective treatments with minimal side effects. Rest assured, they are not addictive. They absolutely do not change a person's core personality, and they will not turn anyone into a vegetable. Their purpose is simple: to gently and precisely correct a chemical imbalance in the brain and help restore the normal level of neurotransmitters. It's no different than giving insulin to someone with diabetes or providing a blood pressure tablet to a patient with hypertension. Crucially, however, the medication and the dosage must only be selected by a consultant psychiatrist, taking into account the patient's age and any pre-existing medical conditions. Self-medication here is simply unacceptable. There is no need to be afraid of these modern treatments. For countless people, this medication provides the only real chance they have to return to a normal, fulfilling life. Alongside medication, talking therapy is absolutely essential in managing depression. Now, you might be wondering, why does an older person need to have a good chat with a complete stranger? After all, they have you, their children and grandchildren. But a psychotherapist isn't just someone to talk to. They are a trained specialist who uses specific techniques to help people reshape their thinking and their behaviour. Firstly, in the therapist's office, an older person can get everything off their chest without any fear of being judged or misunderstood. They can openly discuss their fears, their regrets, their hurts, and even the fear of death itself, topics that are often simply too difficult to bring up even with the people closest to them. Secondly, The therapist helps pinpoint and challenge those negative automatic thoughts that are truly at the heart of depression. Thoughts like, I'm useless or I'm just a burden to everyone can be carefully examined. This helps the person learn to view themselves and their situation much more realistically. Thirdly, therapy helps people discover new purpose and support structures in life, especially following retirement or the devastating loss of a loved one. It is essentially vital work to help them successfully adapt to this brand new chapter. Cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT, is especially effective here. Crucially, this isn't about endless, sprawling conversations about the past. It is structured, focused work designed to achieve concrete results right here, right now. Beyond the necessary professional care, simple lifestyle changes, the non-medical things, can make a world of difference. And these are things you can certainly help organise. Number one, and this is absolutely key, is establishing a solid daily routine. Depression can plunge life into chaos, but a consistent structure gives them a vital sense of control and stability. Try to keep wake-up times, bedtimes, and meal times regular. Secondly, physical activity. They don't need to break any records. Even a brief 15 or 20-minute stroll in the fresh air works wonders. Exercise helps release endorphins, our body's natural feel-good hormones. Why not try walking together? It offers both physical activity and emotional support. Thirdly, sunlight. It's essential for stimulating the production of vitamin D and serotonin. Make sure their room is bright during the day. Pull back those curtains and let the light flood in. Fourthly, nutrition. Their diet should include plenty of foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, like oily fish, B vitamins, found in grains and green leafy vegetables, and tryptophan. Think bananas, turkey, and cheese. And fifth, encourage manageable but regular activities that bring some small measure of satisfaction and create a real sense of purpose and usefulness. And to wrap up, we come to the most crucial element, your role. Now, you can't actually cure your loved one's depression. That really is a job for the professionals. But you can do something that no doctor can. Provide them with that essential sense of love, unwavering support, and the feeling of being truly needed. So what concrete steps can you take? Perhaps starting right now. First off, just be there. You don't need to fill the silence constantly. Sometimes simply sitting quietly, offering a hug, or watching a film together speaks far louder than 1,000 words ever could. Secondly, listen. Listen actively. That means not interrupting, and certainly not offering advice unless they specifically ask for it. Just allow the person the space they need to truly talk things out. Thirdly, offer practical help around the house. Take over some of those everyday tasks that have become overwhelming for them. Perhaps a trip to the shops or a bit of cleaning. This really helps lift that heavy burden of guilt they might feel about their own perceived inability to cope. Fourthly, praise the smallest victories. Did they manage to get up and make breakfast? Tell them, that is absolutely brilliant. Did they get out for a short walk? I'm so pleased you got some fresh air. And finally, and most importantly, please don't give up. Treating depression is a process. It can be a long one, and there will inevitably be setbacks. But your unwavering belief in your loved one, your patience and your love, that is the most powerful resource they have on their journey toward recovery. Well, let's wrap things up now. Depression in later life is certainly not a sign of bad character, nor is it laziness, and it is definitely not just a normal part of getting older. It is a serious, often insidious condition that cunningly masks itself as simple fatigue, irritability, and various physical aches and pains. It robs a person of their zest for life, placing a dreadful burden not only on them, but on the whole family unit. The most crucial takeaway from today is this: the 7 key signs: a profound loss of interest, issues with sleep and appetite, persistent tiredness, feelings of guilt, trouble concentrating, and those nagging, unexplained physical pains. These are simply not things we can afford to ignore. The vital turning point in our understanding must be the realization that depression can and must be treated regardless of age. Contemporary medicine offers us effective and safe methods to do so. By sweeping this problem under the rug, we are not showing respect for old age. Rather, we are condemning a loved one to a truly painful and miserable existence. Please remember that your attention and steady care can become the life raft, pulling your relative out of that dreadful abyss of despair. Thank you so much for watching this vital information right through to the end. If you found this discussion useful, please do tap the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And I have one final, sincere request. Please share in the comments if you have encountered these sorts of behaviours in your own family. How did you handle it? What interventions proved helpful? Your personal experience could be an absolutely invaluable support for hundreds of others who are searching for answers right now. Please take the very best care of yourselves and your dear loved ones.